Welcome to Real Stories in Real Estate with your host, Denise Laframboise. Real people sharing real stories about their adventures in real estate.
Hi there. Welcome to Real Stories in Real Estate, the podcast where we talk to real people about actual things they've done, what they've learned, the pros and cons of their own experiences in building wealth through real estate. So I'm your host, Denise Laframboise, and today I have with me Alex Wilkins. So thank you for joining me, Alex.
No problem, Denise. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So what are we going to talk about today? What do you want to share with us?
I think the thing that we should talk about is using refinancing in your house, or getting that space in your mortgage or equity. That's using the equity in your house. Did I say that right?
Yep. No, it's good, right? We're using our house to make things better in a lot of ways, right? We do this for a number of reasons. A very common one is to improve cash flow or pay off debts, especially right now with COVID and people that had unexpected job loss or change of jobs or change of work or had to float a business for a little bit. Like there's been quite a bit of unforeseen hardship at times, sometimes people getting illness. So this is definitely very common. We also have a lot of people refinancing to pull out money to do renovations because we've sat in our houses and stared at homes that we wanted fixed for a long time. And with interest rates very low, it's very easy to access money cheap to fix something that is really bothering you in your house, right? Mm-hmm. I do think there's a bit of a stigma around that at times. Like, do you feel that way?
And I guess the biggest trap that people might fall into is if you use your equity to, maybe close out a credit card or something like that. You want to make sure that you fix the problem, close out the credit card, don't use it anymore, and then use that equity for getting to the bottom of the problem. And like we used it long time ago for that, and fixed the problem. Got a good budget in place, and we used it just recently to help renovate our basement. So it's a great use to equity, and with interest rates low, it's really easy to use.
Yeah, we also refinanced one time because I had a third kid I didn't plan on having, and mat leaves are not very good paying. So we ended up refinancing so we could stretch out our amortization and put, I think we put a vehicle in there so that our monthly payments were super low, so that I could survive like being home with the kids for the year. There was a stigma around, I can't believe you're using your house to do this. And I was like, but the alternative is to go back to work early and lose time, right? So sometimes there's some financial reasons to do things, and sometimes there's emotional reasons. It's not always just one or the other. But I do find a lot of the times now with interest rates as low as they are, sometimes your vehicles even are more expensive, let alone your credit cards and your lines of credit.
Mm-hmm. Well, especially because even if you're financing a vehicle, it's a short-term finance, so your payments are very large. So when we did it, we were transitioning into me owning a business, and we did the refinance and put our cars into it, and we dropped our monthly expenses by $950 a month just by having our cars fold into the mortgage, and then other things that we had on the go. Like, it was very easy, and we didn't tap anything out from a finance, like an equity perspective. We just used the little bit of room that we wanted to kind of bump up and reduce our monthly expenses. So it was a great way to make sure that we were comfortable with running a business.
Yeah. And some of them, like, depending on where the monthly payments are, right? So if it's a vehicle with a really high payment or some credit cards, like we have done them as high as saving people $5,000 a month, right? That's a whole income, 60 grand a year that somebody is keeping in their pocket that previously was going out to debts, bills, and interest.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, some of these situations are quite extreme, and they're pretty amazing what they can do for you financially when you're basically restructuring and having more of the money coming out of your pocket to go like to principal instead of interest. It's common. Like, do you ever remember, like, were you ever tried to be told, oh, well, just use a line of credit instead?
Yeah, just use the line of credit or use the line of credit that gets, bolted onto your mortgage. I'll just use that instead of the equity in your house. And the interest rate is just a little bit higher. And so the payments that go out to it are just a little bit more interest versus it having inside of your mortgage. And yeah, it's not a good setup.
I always find it funny how they position it, right? Because it's like, do you want a line of credit? Oh yeah, everybody has a line of credit. Yeah, I want one. Or if you said like, do you want a second mortgage that's at a higher interest rate? And we're going to pay interest only. So you probably will be on a plan to never pay it back. Because those are the same thing.
Same
right?
thing. Yeah.
But how it's positioned is remarkably different on whether you want it or not. So let's talk a little bit about like, is there anything you found as a negative with refinancing? Like say pulling out money to do your basement, like was there anything negative about it?
Not in the situation that we did it, but you can kind of confirm or educate on my opinion here. But I think you got to be careful with how much you kind of pull out. Like if you go right to the very, very top of your availability, and then the market has a huge change, you could potentially be in some trouble, right?
Yeah. Well, and sometimes it's just being reasonable about, what is the top of your budget? The top of my budget that I can qualify for as a self-employed person might not be as risky as the top of somebody's budget if you're full-time, right? Because your available income to actually pay something might be different.
Right.
Right? Because I have a corporation that's earning money that they don't count on the stress test, right? So that's a little bit different. But yeah, I always worry about people that are pushing right to the very, very maximum. What happens in the case of an illness, a job loss, a maternity leave, where you're only making 80% or 50% of what you were making? Like, how are you still able to make those payments? Right. And for some people, they, have a friend that lives in a room that they're renting, for an extra $500 or something. Like that stuff doesn't get captured on the stress test. How often you eat out to restaurants and stuff doesn't, or how often you travel doesn't get affected on the stress test too, right? So there's some lifestyle components to it. So somebody who's very, very frugal, maybe they can buy at the top of their budget because they still have a lot more room in their actual budget because they don't spend the same way that someone else does. Yeah. What about, so what did you learn from refinancing, or what did you learn from the process? Like, was there anything that surprised you?
I guess I was surprised at the amount that we were able to get, or just kind of like the amount that was available. It was more of a choice of how much did we need versus, hey, here's all the money that you can have. And then we took it all. It also depends on you have to have the right education behind it too. You can't just waltz into a bank and ask for equity out of your house. Like you need to talk to someone that's experienced in the industry that can understand what on both sides of the story or both sides of the place to really give you the information that you want and that you need at the time versus just, hey, here's some money and have fun. Yeah. Right. So it was a huge help having that experience when we were making that decision.
Well, and I think especially when you're self-employed, right? If you are going to one particular lender or whoever who doesn't really understand or doesn't look in the right place for your money, if you're self-employed, you're going to get remarkably different answers than you will from lenders who have specialized self-employed programs or work with self-employed people more often, right? And it's often the case that you'll see somebody who's self-employed say, I went to my bank and I can only get this much. And that there's other lenders that are really much better at doing self-employed. And they're like, no, look at your business. Look at how much money it's making. Of course you can have this much, right? Yeah, it's really about, like, I always say, like, you can go to a bank, you can go to a broker. It's all the same, right? Like you can have good and bad in every job and you can have great experiences anywhere. My exception is usually with self-employed, you're going to have more options with a broker every time, right?
Yeah, I would agree.
So if you could go back and change anything, is there something you would have changed?
I probably would have done what we did a little bit sooner. There was a lot of like humming and hawing and like figuring out what's the best solution and what's the best option and stuff. And had we made some of those choices earlier on, it might have made it even better than it was at the point. But the decisions that we did make, like they were the right thing to go. I would have switched to a broker a lot sooner, I guess.
Yeah.
If in the whole life of all the mortgages that I've had, switching to a broker sooner would have been the one thing that I would have changed.
Nice. I feel like I wish I did it sooner is the answer to that question with every one of these podcasts I do. Right.
Yeah.
How was buying that house? Any regrets? Yeah, I wish I would have done it a few years sooner. Like they're all the same.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about, you're also a business owner. So you want to talk a little bit about your business and what you do?
Yeah, so I own Wilkins IT Solutions. We are a managed service provider here in Durham region. Our focus is managing technology. So whether it's your email or your computers or any type of technical stuff, which is a professional term, of course, we can help manage it and kind of take it off your plate. So as a business owner, you can focus on doing what you do, and we'll focus on what we do.
I use the term stuff when I'm referring to anything computer related.
Yeah. The thingy and the stuff.
Right?
Yeah.
The stuff. And I think one of the big things that stands out about your service versus others is just that how much you care about security and privacy, right? I feel like a lot of self-employed people, a lot of businesses don't really understand how much they need to care about people's data. Right. And
yeah, there's a huge thing people don't understand about pipeda or pipida, however you want to say it, tomato, and that needs to be applied to every business in Canada. So it's a requirement, and just having those couple little things put in place that we just do by default can save your butt if you get into some trouble, or if something happens or there's some kind of breach. You need to have that information kind of at hand. It's nothing too overtly scary. It's just a couple check boxes you need to get checked to make sure that it's run properly.
Yeah, I remember when I started in this business, and I came from healthcare, right? So privacy is everything, confidentiality is everything. I was always used to, somebody would look at what files you looked at and are you supposed to be there and all of those things. So it was just part of who I was. And then I transitioned to being self-employed, and I was like, oh, there's nothing, like nobody cares what happens. Like, this is not right. Right. And I think it was a while before the PIPEDA really came into effect for everybody. It probably should have been there forever, but it's very interesting to see, how little of that actually was in private business that I had just expected should have been there.
Mm-hmm. Well, and as a business owner, you've got enough to deal with, and to have that layered on top as a requirement, which it is a very good requirement, it should be done by everybody, but that's just more things for you going to have to juggle and manage in your day. So to have somebody in their own field being able to apply all of those regulations for you just with one stroke, because it's something that we do on a daily basis, it's just one less thing for you to have to manage. Then you know that your stuff is safe when it's floating around in the cloud.
Well, especially we're taking people's personal information, right? Their birthdays and their IDs and their social insurance number. There's a lot that could go wrong with that if somebody were to access it that shouldn't, right?
Yeah, and that's extreme levels of private information. Like a person's full name and email address has value on the dark web. Never mind their full address and your birthday and your mother's maiden name and all those other kind of things. Like just basic information like your full legal name has a dollar value. So all of that stuff needs to be properly protected.
On the dark web. Ooh.
Yeah.
See, it's in the stuff category for me, whatever that is, stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing with us today. I really appreciate being here.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so basically what we were talking about today a little bit is refinance. So it's not for everybody. It's not for every situation, but there are definitely situations where it can make sense or can save people money. And it's really important to get an unbiased opinion about what that looks like, right? Sometimes a line of credit might be a better option, or a second mortgage, but sometimes a refinance at renewal, or possibly even paying a penalty to access money from your home, can sometimes save people thousands of dollars in interest, depending on what kind of debts and things they're holding or what they need money for. I am your host, Denise Laframboise, and to listen to more episodes of this podcast, you can check out them on my website, www.deniselaframboise.ca, or you can check them out wherever you listen to your podcast, so Audible, Spotify, or Apple. Thanks for joining me.